The first thing I heard was the sound of my front door slamming so hard against the wall that a picture frame fell off the shelf in my hallway. Then came a woman's voice. Not knocking, not asking permission, just yelling. You think the rules don't apply to you, don't you? I was standing in my kitchen, holding a cup of coffee, when I turned around and saw a complete stranger marching through my house like she owned the place. She had a clipboard tucked under one arm, oversized sunglasses pushed onto her head, and the kind of confidence that only comes from someone who hasn't been told no in a very long time. That was the moment my peaceful retirement officially ended. My name is Ethan Walker, and after 23 years working homicide investigations in Denver, I moved to a small neighborhood outside Nashville called Maple Ridge Estates. Nothing fancy, just a quiet subdivision with tree-lined streets, decent neighbors, and enough backyard space to finally build the workshop I'd been dreaming about for years. After 2 decades of sirens, crime scenes, and midnight phone calls, I wanted simple. Coffee in the morning, barbecues on weekends, maybe a little fishing. That was the plan. Unfortunately, Maple Ridge Estates came with one unexpected feature. Her name was Brenda Collins. Officially, she was president of the neighborhood association. Unofficially, she behaved like the governor of a very small country. I learned about Brenda before I even finished unpacking. The moving truck was still sitting in my driveway when an older man from across the street wandered over carrying a 6-pack of beer. His name was Roy. Nice guy, retired electrician. The first thing he said wasn't welcome to the neighborhood. It was, don't make eye contact with Brenda. I laughed. He didn't. Trust me, he said. Just don't. At the time I thought he was joking. Turns out Roy was trying to save me months of headaches. The first violation notice arrived 3 days after I moved in. According to Brenda, my mailbox was 1 inch lower than neighborhood guidelines recommended. 1 inch. Not broken. Not leaning. 1 inch. I figured it was a misunderstanding. So I fixed it. A week later, another notice appeared. My trash can have been visible from the street after pickup. Then it was my driveway. Then my porch light. Then my garden hose. At one point I got a warning because the color of my front door was supposedly inconsistent with community aesthetics. The door was dark blue. 3 other houses on the same street had dark blue doors. When I pointed that out, Brenda informed me those homes had received special approval. Of course they had. Every interaction followed the same script. She would appear out of nowhere holding that clipboard. She would quote regulations nobody had ever read. And she would smile while doing it. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile people wear when they're enjoying themselves a little too much. Still, I tried to stay polite. Maybe she was just passionate. Maybe she took her responsibilities too seriously. Maybe there was something going on in her life I didn't understand. I've spent enough years investigating people to know that behavior usually has a reason behind it. But then I started hearing stories. One neighbor had spent thousands replacing perfectly good landscaping after Brenda threatened legal action. Another family stopped putting up holiday decorations altogether because they were tired of receiving violation notices. A young couple down the block eventually moved away after 2 years of constant disputes. Nobody liked her. Nobody trusted her. But everybody tolerated her. Because fighting Brenda always seemed to make things worse. Then came a neighborhood barbecue. Looking back now, that's where everything really started. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in early June. A few neighbors gathered in my backyard. Nothing wild. Burgers. Music playing quietly. Kids running around. The kind of gathering that reminds you why neighborhoods are supposed to exist in the first place. For the first time since moving there, Maple Ridge actually felt like home. Then Brenda showed up carrying a tape measure. And the moment I saw that tape measure in her hand, I had a feeling this woman wasn't interested in enforcing rules. She was looking for control. What I didn't realize was just how far she was willing to go to get it. And before the summer was over, that obsession would lead her straight into my house and into the biggest mistake of her life. The first thing Brenda did was walk straight past the grill and pull out her tape measure. Not say hello. Not grab a burger. Not ask how everyone was doing. She went directly to measuring the distance between my smoker and the property line. I remember Roy standing beside me holding a paper plate, watching the whole thing unfold. "She's doing it again," he muttered. I almost laughed. Almost. Brenda crouched down like a crime scene investigator examining evidence. Then she stood up with a look of triumph. For feet and 8 inches. Nobody said anything. She looked around as if she expected applause. The community handbook requires a minimum clearance of 5 feet. Histoire de rire. Brenda were cooking hamburgers. The rules don't stop applying because you're having a party. There was something strange about the way she said it. Not professional, not concerned, satisfied, like she'd been waiting all week to find a violation. That was the day I stopped believing she cared about neighborhood standards. This was something else, something personal. Over the next several weeks, things escalated. Fast. At first it was small. Anonymous notes began appearing on my front door. No signatures, no return address, just typed messages. Your hedges look uneven. Your garage door remained open too long. Your vehicle was parked improperly. One note actually complained that my welcome mat looked aggressive. I wish I were kidding. Then the photographs started. Neighbors told me they saw Brenda walking around with her phone pointed at houses. Not everyone's house. Mine, specifically mine. One evening, Roy called me around 9 o'clock. "You might want to come outside." When I stepped onto my porch, I spotted her standing near the sidewalk. She immediately turned away. Too late. The flash from her camera had already gone off. The next morning, she emailed the association board 6 photographs of my property. The violation? One of my workshop windows needed cleaning. That should have been ridiculous. Instead, it felt invasive. And that's when I started paying closer attention. You learn a few things after spending 23 years investigating criminals. One of them is recognizing patterns. People reveal themselves through repetition. Brenda wasn't acting like someone trying to maintain standards. She was acting like someone trying to win a war. The question was why. The answer came from an unexpected source. A woman named Linda Harris. She lived 3 houses down and had been in Maple Ridge for nearly 15 years. One afternoon, she invited me over for coffee. Halfway through our conversation, she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "You know why Brenda really hates new homeowners?" I shook my head. Linda sighed. A few years ago, she tried getting elected to the city council. That got my attention. Apparently, Brenda spent months campaigning. Signs, fundraisers, public meetings, the whole thing. And she lost badly. Afterward, she became obsessed with controlling the one thing she still could. The neighborhood. Every rule, every decision, every complaint, every tiny piece of authority became part of her identity. The HOA wasn't just an organization anymore. It was her kingdom, and kingdoms need enemies, especially when their rulers feel powerless everywhere else. Suddenly, everything made sense. The endless inspections, the constant violations, the need to remind people who was in charge. It wasn't about property values. It was about validation. The problem was that people like Brenda usually can't tolerate resistance. And without realizing it, I had started resisting. Not aggressively, just quietly. I stopped reacting, stopped apologizing, stopped jumping every time she sent a notice. The more calm I became, the more frustrated she seemed. Then one afternoon, she crossed another line. I was repairing a section of fence in my backyard when I noticed movement near the property line. I looked up. Brenda was standing on a stepladder, peering over the fence. Actually peering. Not passing by. Not glancing. Watching. I pulled off my work gloves. "Can I help you?" She nearly fell off the ladder. Then she recovered. I was documenting structural inconsistencies. From 6 feet above ground, her face tightened. She climbed down and walked away without another word. That night, I installed additional security cameras. Not because I felt threatened, because something felt off, deeply off. Call it instinct. The same instinct that kept me alive during investigations. The same instinct that told me when suspects were about to make mistakes. and Brenda was getting close to making one. The final week before everything exploded felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. No bawelasche notices. No emails. No photographs. Nothing. At first I enjoyed it. Then I started wondering why. People rarely abandon obsessions overnight. Eventually I realized what was happening. She hadn't stopped. She was planning. I just didn't know what. Then came a Thursday afternoon in late July. Hot enough to make the air shimmer above the pavement. I was replacing warped boards along the back fence. Simple work. The kind that clears your head. I had noise-canceling headphones on and a classic rock playlist running while I carried lumber back and forth between the garage and backyard. The front door stayed unlocked. Not unusual. The neighborhood had always felt safe. Besides, I was moving materials every few minutes. Locking and unlocking the door constantly would have been a hassle. Around 45 minutes later, I headed inside for water. The moment I stepped into the hallway, every instinct in my body activated. Something was wrong. The house felt different. Not damaged. Not broken. Occupied. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and somehow know you're not alone? That's exactly what hit me. Then I heard movement coming from the dining room. A drawer closing. A chair scraping lightly against the floor. I rounded the corner and froze. Spread across my dining table were personal documents, bank statements, medical paperwork, birthday cards, insurance records, private mail. Every drawer in the room had been opened. Several cabinets stood half open. And standing in the middle of it all, holding her phone and taking photographs like a reporter at a crime scene, was Brenda Collins. For a second, neither of us spoke. She looked just as surprised as I was, like she'd expected to have more time. Then she slowly lowered her phone and smiled. That same smile, the one she'd worn from the beginning. Only this time, there was something desperate hiding underneath it, something unstable. And as I stared at the piles of my personal documents spread across the table, I realized this situation had just become a lot bigger than a neighborhood dispute. Because Brenda hadn't come into my house to inspect property violations. She had come looking for something. The only question was what? And the answer she was about to give me would change everything. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The house was completely silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Brenda stood beside my dining table with my personal paperwork spread out in front of her. I stood in the doorway, trying to process what I was looking at. Then I noticed something. She wasn't photographing random documents. She had separated everything into categories. Bills, bank statements, insurance records, personal correspondence. It looked organized, planned, deliberate. And suddenly this didn't feel like an impulsive act anymore. It felt like a mission. What exactly are you doing in my house, Brenda? My voice came out calmer than I expected. Years in homicide investigations had taught me something important. The angrier you get, the less people reveal. She slowly straightened her posture. Then she did something that genuinely surprised me. She acted offended. I was conducting an inspection. I blinked. An inspection. That's correct. Inside my house. The board has a responsibility to ensure compliance. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. She pointed toward the paperwork. I received reports. From who? She hesitated. Then came the answer. Concerned residents. Of course. The invisible army of concerned residents. The same people who apparently spent their days worrying about mailbox heights and garden hoses. I took a few steps forward. Her confidence shifted almost immediately. People like Brenda often mistake silence for weakness. The moment someone stops playing along, the entire performance starts falling apart. You broke in my home. I did not break in. You entered without permission. The door was open. I nodded. And every bank in America has doors. Her jaw tightened. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. Then I noticed her eyes drift toward the corner of the room, toward one of my security cameras. The color drained from her face. Just a little. But enough. I followed her gaze. Then another realization hit me. The dining room camera wasn't the only one recording. The hallway camera had captured the entry. The front porch camera had captured her arrival. The garage camera had captured her circling the property earlier that afternoon. Every angle, every step, every decision, documented. Suddenly, I wasn't worried anymore. I was curious. Tell me something, Brenda. She swallowed. What? What were you looking for? I wasn't looking for anything. That's a lie. Silence. Then another silence. And another. Finally, she cracked. You want to know the truth? I folded my arms. Absolutely. Something shifted in her expression. Not anger. Not arrogance. Resentment. Years of resentment. The kind that builds quietly until it starts poisoning everything. You moved here and everybody liked you. Hier. What? People listened to you. Now she was talking faster. Roy, Linda, the others. They respected you. The pieces were starting to come together. This had never been about regulations. Not really. It wasn't even about power. It was about relevance. Brenda had spent years making herself the center of the neighborhood. Then someone new arrived. Someone people trusted naturally. And she couldn't stand it. You thought I was trying to replace you? The look she gave me answered the question. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I looked down at my private documents scattered across the table. The sympathy disappeared. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? She asked. Calling the police. The panic arrived instantly. No, wait. I started dialing. Ethan, please. Interesting. It was the first time she'd ever called me by my first name. Not Mr. Walker. Not homeowner. Not resident. Ethan. Suddenly, we were on a first-name basis. Funny how that happens when consequences show up. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. No, you don't. Tears started forming in her eyes. Real tears. Not dramatic ones. The kind that appear when someone finally realizes the situation is beyond their control. My life will be over. I looked at her, then around the room, then back at her. You should have thought about that before you walked through my front door. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol officers arrived. I gave them access to the footage. We watched together. The porch camera, the entry, the search, the photographs, everything. The evidence was so clear that nobody needed to debate what happened. Brenda sat silently in a dining room chair while the officers reviewed the recordings. At one point, she started crying. At another, she started blaming stress. Then she blamed the board. Then she blamed me. Eventually, she blamed everyone except herself. The handcuffs came out shortly afterward, and for the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing left to say. Word traveled through Maple Ridge faster than wildfire. By sunset, half the neighborhood knew. By morning, everyone knew. People who hadn't spoken up for years suddenly found their voices. Stories started emerging. Threats, harassment, intimidation, coercion of finis, selective enforcement. The list kept growing. Apparently, I wasn't the first target, just the first person who happened to have cameras covering every angle. The association board held an emergency meeting the following week. It lasted almost 4 hours. Brenda resigned before they could vote her out. Not that it mattered. The outcome was already decided. The community she had spent years trying to control no longer trusted her. And trust, once broken, rarely comes back. The legal case dragged on for several months. There were hearings, arguments, negotiations, attempts to minimize what happened. But facts are stubborn things, especially when they're recorded in high definition. Eventually, a plea agreement was reached. Probation, financial penalties, community service, no jail time. Some residents felt that was fair. Others thought she got off easy. Honestly, even now I'm not sure where I stand. Because here's the strange part. Months later, after everything was over, I ran into Brenda one final time. She was volunteering at a community cleanup event. No clipboard, no authority, no audience. Just another resident picking up trash beside everyone else. For a moment, we looked at each other. Then she nodded. I nodded back. And that was it. No apology, no argument, no dramatic speech. Just silence. Sometimes life doesn't give you the perfect ending. Sometimes justice looks less like revenge and more like accountability. And sometimes the people who cause the most damage aren't evil at all. They're just so desperate to matter that they forget where the line is. I still live in Maple Ridge today. The neighborhood is quieter now. The association functions normally. People actually attend meetings without fear. Most days are exactly what I hoped retirement would be. Coffee in the morning, projects in the workshop, barbecues with neighbors. Simple things. But every time I walk past that front door, I remember how close one person's obsession came to destroying her entire life. And I'll admit sometimes I still wonder, if that door had been locked that afternoon, would Brenda eventually have stopped? Or would she have found another way to push things further? What do you think? Was Brenda ultimately a victim of her own obsession? Or should she have faced even harsher consequences for what she did? Let me know down in the comments, because this is one of those stories where reasonable people can honestly disagree. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, neighborhood dispute, or someone who let a little bit of power go way too far, share your experience below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real-world stories about conflict, accountability, and the moments when ordinary people finally push back.